Welcome back to The Savvy Psychologist. I'm Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, and every week I'll help you meet life's challenges with evidence-based research, a sympathetic ear, and zero judgment. Your mind used to be like a sponge, but today it's more like a colander. You try to read, and while you're looking at the words, nothing is sinking in. You try to have a conversation, but everyone sounds like Charlie Brown's teacher. You try to work, or write, or plan, or think, but instead, it feels like you're in the middle of Times Square on New Year's Eve. Overwhelming and distracting. So whatever you call it, concentration, focus, or attention, it's quickly becoming the rarest of resources. Why can't we focus? Well, these days, the finger is most often pointed at technology. Smartphones are giving us the attention span of goldfish, shout the headlines. And while technology certainly plays a role in our fractured attention, it's not the only culprit. What else could it be? Well, check out these 9 reasons, plus 6 ways to get your focus on. The first possible culprit could be you're anxious. Worry and overthinking take up all your bandwidth, leaving you unable to focus. Indeed, worry is the ultimate in missing out. It takes you out of the moment you're in and puts you squarely in worst-case scenarios that not only aren't real, but what's more, probably won't happen. Culprit number 2 could be you're burned out. Along with exhaustion and resentment, a hallmark of burnout is having to work harder, but getting less done. It's as if your brain has become allergic to your job. Any exposure causes a big reaction. It's no wonder you can't focus. Culprit number 3 could be you're depressed. There's a new school of thought that depression actually isn't primarily about mood. Instead, it's thought it could be about motivation. And anyone who's ever suffered from depression and felt overwhelmed at the prospect of making a sandwich or getting through an entire shower knows what I mean. And who's the loyal sidekick of motivation? Concentration. They go together everywhere. When you feel pumped, it's easy to focus. But when you're feeling slower than a herd of turtles, your concentration naturally feels more like a disco ball than a laser beam. Culprit number 4 could be you're drowning in clutter. Now, this one may seem surprising at first, but when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. We can only process visual information about so many things at once. So focusing on one thing means competitively suppressing everything else. If we're trying to focus on one thing, having to filter out a stack of dirty dishes, unopened mail, and a veritable mosaic of sticky notes takes way too much bandwidth. Culprit number 5 could be you have a food intolerance. If you have a food sensitivity, mainstream allergens like dairy, wheat, eggs, or corn, as well as more obscure food categories like fermentable carbs or sugar alcohols, may cloud your thinking like a fog machine gone rogue. Culprit number 6 could be you're exhausted. If all your remaining energy is going towards staying upright and not drooling, it's no wonder you can't concentrate. In a culture where coffee regularly replaces sleep, we've forgotten what it's like not to feel tired. Culprit number 7 could be you're not sure what you're doing. You can't stay on task because the task isn't well defined enough, or you don't have all the information you need to properly tackle the task. For example, say you're a student trying to write a paper, but your to-do list simply says, write paper. Trying to write before you have a clear idea of your thesis and your major supporting points, or a breakdown of what you have to do, make an outline, research your main points, creates an open invitation to distraction. Culprit number 8 could be you're unconsciously procrastinating. Sometimes we are participants in our own downfall. You may simply not want to do what you're supposed to do. It's easier, more rewarding, and simply feels better to give in to checking email, scrolling through the news, or even getting sucked into productive procrastination like cleaning, travel planning, or other tasks that need to get done, just not now. And finally, culprit number 9 as to why you can't concentrate could be you have a medical issue. MS, lupus, fibromyalgia, celiac disease, cancer and its treatment, or even pregnancy are all notorious for causing various forms of brain fog. As someone who once put lettuce in the freezer and ketchup under the sink while pregnant, this is definitely a thing. So now, what to do when the fog comes rolling in? Well, we all wish we could come down with a bout of attention surplus disorder. Until that happens, try these 5 tips. Tip number 1 is break whatever you're trying to do into ridiculously tiny steps. Forget breaking tasks into 10-minute chunks or whatever else the interweb says. Instead, go with your gut. Break a task down and then ask yourself how you feel about it. If you have any hint of resistance, break it down even further. It's totally okay if your chunks get ridiculously minuscule, like Google tax software, or lace up my workout shoes, or even open laptop. Only you will ever know how small your tasks have to get to keep you moving forward. So make your tasks smaller and smaller until your gut says, okay, fine. Once you've broken the inertia, you've done the hardest part. Tip number 2 is turn your attention inside out. Oftentimes, our own internal workings take up most of our bandwidth, leaving little for what we're actually supposed to be doing. So if you're worrying, ruminating, overthinking, or are otherwise stuck in your head, consciously turn your attention outward to the task at hand. And I won't lie, turning your attention to what you're supposed to be doing is hard. Not because it's necessarily hard to do, but because it's hard to sustain. Turning your attention to the task isn't difficult, but ignoring everything else is. Thankfully, if you have the right expectations around it, it gets easier. So think of this as a repetitive task, like filing. When you file papers, you don't just cram everything in one spot and are done with it. You file one document at a time, again and again. It's just how you do it. So think of focusing in the same way. Repetition is part of the process. Tip number 3, organize your immediate environment. Okay, so remember how clutter competes for our attention? That extends to all sensory clutter. Noise, email alerts on your laptop, the loud conversation right behind you at the coffee shop. And you can use various paraphernalia to help with this. Noise-canceling headphones, social media blocking apps. As the Pulitzer Prize-winning author Annie Dillard says, quote, appealing workplaces are to be avoided. One wants a room with no view. So take a few minutes to make your workplace into a giant distraction filter, and focusing gets a lot easier. Tip number 4 is meet yourself where you're at. Have a shorter than usual attention span today? Fine. Let's say you usually knock out 25-minute Pomodoros. 25 minutes of work, 5-minute break, repeat. But today, your head feels like it's full of marinara sauce. Rather than forcing yourself to aim for your usual 25 minutes, start with 10, or 8, or 1. Lower the bar. Yes, 1 minute of work isn't much, but repeated over and over again, those drops in the bucket add up to a bucket load of productivity. The upshot? Something is better than nothing. Tip number 5 is, this should go without saying, but take care of yourself. How often have you thought that stabbing pain in your head was a brain tumor, but really you were just dehydrated? Or that everyone and everything in your life was against you, but really you were just hangry? Is there an equally easily fixable reason you can't focus? Are you exhausted? Hungover? Did you just cut out refined sugar or gluten or some other usual go-to? There's very little that a good night's sleep, a brisk walk, a big glass of water, and a healthy snack can't fix. So take care of your body's needs, and your mind will follow. And finally, tip number 6. Of course, if your concentration problems go beyond the occasional off day, consider seeking out some help. Anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADHD, burnout, food intolerances, and most medical issues are treatable. So see your doctor, or of course, a good psychologist. If he or she doesn't help or doesn't listen, see another one. As a symptom, brain fog doesn't often get the attention it deserves because it's not easily measurable, and it's not life-threatening, but it does threaten your quality of life. So break down your tasks, turn your attention inside out, remove distraction, take care of yourself, and get help if you need it. When the next fog bank rolls in, you'll be ready to blow it away. And you didn't think the episode would end without a bad joke, did you? Here you go. What happened when the Ford Escort took Ritalin? It became a Ford Focus. Thank you so much for making The Savvy Psychologist a part of your life. Never miss a thing when you sign up for the newsletter at quickanddirtytips.com/newsletters or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. You can listen on Spotify, follow on Twitter at QDT Savvy Psych, or like on Facebook, where there are always links to episodes no longer available on Apple Podcasts. I'm Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, and The Savvy Psychologist is strictly for informational purposes and doesn't substitute for mental health care from a licensed professional. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you all next Friday for a happier, healthier mind.